Okay. Okay, so you see the table that I have?
Yes,
Yes,
Bhante, we
Bhante.
can see the table.
Okay, okay, good. Somebody raised hand. Is there some problem? This is Pata O'Neill. Okay, maybe it was not intentional. Okay, so we have this. What we'll be doing today is the perception of danger, which is one of the contemplations that occurs only one time, explicitly only one time. But I would say that there's a strong overlap between the perception of danger, the perception of death, and the perception of suffering. And so we could bring some of the other contemplations also under the perception of danger. Okay, now I'm going to stop this share and share another file with which I will explore the perception of danger. Mm. Sorry, I'm having a little technical trouble. Oh, I see why. Something is blocking. Okay, do you see the file called The Meaning of Adinava?
Yes, Bhante.
Oh, okay, okay, good. Okay, so in Pali, we have the expression Adinava Sanya. So as I explained last time, the sense of Sanya, originally the sense is perception, like an ordinary sense perception, but the word is also used for themes of discursive reflection that are used, turned over in the mind in order to generate, I would call, a very clear, distinct insight into a particular subject, particular topic. And so in this case, the theme that's being explored, the Pali word is adinava, which I've translated as danger, but maybe danger is too specific a meaning. So we could say some of the other senses of adinava. I think Venerable Tanisaro used the word drawback, which is pretty good. I've seen others use disappointment, or we could even say unsatisfactory nature of the particular thing being examined. And we find that this idea of adinava plays very, very pivotal role in various teachings of the Buddha. For example, we find in the discourse on the Noble Search, this is in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 26. Here the Buddha is speaking about his own quest for enlightenment. And he says that in the past, when he was living in the palace, he started to reflect that here I am, I'm subject to birth, old age, and death, to sorrow, misery, and so forth. Then he says, having understood the Adinava, the danger, drawback, disappointment in what is subject to birth, old age, and death, then I decided to go forth into homelessness in order to seek the unborn, the ageless, the deathless, the supreme security from bondage, nibbana. And then in other suttas, we have a set of three items: the enjoyment, the adinava, so we could say the danger, and the escape. For example, the Buddha says that when he was on his quest for enlightenment, he reflected, what is the enjoyment in the world? And then he comes to the conclusion, the enjoyment is the pleasure and happiness that arise dependent on, for example, on the sense objects, or dependent on the five aggregates: bodily form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Then what is the adinava in these things, the adinava in the world? The fact that everything in the world is impermanent, bound up to some degree with suffering and subject to change. That is the danger. And what is the escape, or what is the release from this? And it is the removal of craving and attachment to these things. So we could see that Adinava has that middle role, leading from being immersed in the enjoyment of things. Then one recognizes the danger, the drawback, and then one seeks release or escape by following the path. Okay, now coming, so that is just some thoughts about the meaning of the word Adinava. And now we have an explanation. Yeah, we have an explanation of the perception of danger, of the Adinava Sanya, in the famous Girimananda Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya. And here the Buddha explains to Ananda, he says, what is the perception of danger? Then he says, speaking about a monk who goes to the forest, the foot of a tree, and so on. Then he reflects that this body is a source of much pain and danger, for all sorts of afflictions arise in this body. And then we have a long list of different kinds of illnesses, diseases, afflictions that occur to the body, ending in cold, heat, hunger, thirst, excretion, and urination. But actually, it should be defecation and urination. But that seems to me to be too narrow and too specific an explanation of the perception of danger. I added a few other new diseases that are not on this list. So I had the idea to expand the range of the perception of danger to include what are known in the Buddhist tradition as the 8 bases for acquiring a sense of urgency. So in Pali, these are called the Atta Sangvega Vatu. And the key term here is Sangvega, which is based on the word Vega, which is like a wave or a current, like a burst of energy. And it just has a prefix Sang. So Sangvega is a kind of burst of energy, a kind of state of almost you could call it agitation that arises when one confronts the hard realities of life and one realizes that one has been living in a state of delusion, a state of complete complacency, a state of blindness. And now one's eyes have opened up to the harsh realities of life. And now one feels that compulsion to do something about it, to solve the great problem of repeated birth and death. And we find interesting application of this idea of Samvega in a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya. Oh, I didn't note the number, but it's in the Book of Fours. So the Buddha says he speaks first about four kinds of excellent thoroughbred horses found in the world. And actually, we really want just the first one. This is the most excellent thoroughbred horse. So this horse, as soon as it sees the shadow of the goad, that is when the horse tamer comes into the shed, what do you call this, where they keep the horses? Corral, where they keep the horses. As soon as the horse sees the shadow of the goad, then it knows that it has to submit to the training. And the horse thinks, what task will my trainer set for me today? What can I do to satisfy him? And so when the horse sees the shadow of the goad, then it acquires this samvega, the sense of urgency. So that is the first horse. The second horse is a bit slower. Um, I think it has to see the trainer lift up the goad. The third horse, when the goad is coming down, then it's stirred by the sense of urgency. And then the fourth horse is only stirred by the sense of urgency when it feels the whack of the goad against its backside. And so then we have four people who are like thoroughbred horses. And the best one, the most excellent one, hears that in such and such a place, some woman or man has fallen ill or died. And then he's stirred by a sense of urgency, strives and realizes the supreme truth. Yeah, please, everybody should be muting your microphone. Okay, the second one, I'm not sure that I get it accurately. I think the second person sees with his own eyes that somebody has fallen ill or died. The third person, yeah, I don't remember. But anyway, that's enough. Pat O'Neill, do you have your hand raised? Okay. Okay. So from this, we get the idea of what is meant by the sense of urgency. One has a stark confrontation with some hard reality, hard truth of life, and that sort of breaks this mist or dispels this mist of delusion in which we've been living, and we feel this compulsion to do something about it, which for us as Buddhists means that we seriously commit ourselves to the Dharma, undertake the practice, and strive to realize the supreme truth, even if we don't have the prospect of realizing it immediately, but at least we seriously take up the practice. Like even, there are many traditional Buddhists who tell me that they've lived, when they're growing up in a Buddhist culture in childhood, their youth, even their early adult years. They were just conventional Buddhists. They would go to the temple for the main Buddhist holidays, or maybe occasionally go for a sermon, listening with half a mind. But then something has happened in their, either to their family or their friend. Somebody has fallen ill and died, or they've met with some serious personal challenge or difficulty, and that arouses in them that sense of urgency. And then they really earnestly take up the Dharma and start to realize the value of the Dharma for their life, what they've never realized before. Okay, so now we're going to practice the perception of danger by going through the 8 bases for acquiring a sense of urgency. And so what are these 8 bases? So we have these verses in Pali: Jati, Jara, Vyadi, Chuti, Apaya, Atita, Pataka, Vata, Dukkang, Idani, Ahara, Gaveti, Dukkang, Imani, Atta, Sangvega, Vatuni, Ima, Atta, Sangvega, Vatu. Okay, so the first one is birth. So this is defined in the text: the birth of beings into the various orders of beings, coming to birth, entering the womb, generation, manifestation of the aggregates, obtaining the ayatanas, the basis for contact. So sort of what underlies, as we'll see, what underlies this perception of danger, sort of the unstated premise, is the idea of samsara, repeated existence in the round of rebirths. And so when we speak about birth as a kind of danger, it's not referring just back to the birth that we came in this life, whether 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, but it's the prospect of birth in the future. And not just one birth in the future, but birth upon birth upon birth. And so we have to sort of look into what is it like to be born. And strictly speaking, from the Buddhist perspective, the birth is not just coming out from the mother's womb, but it's the once the rebirth linking takes place in the mother's womb, the whole process of embryo formation, fetal formation, and what do they call this? Embryonic uh, fetal development in the womb, up to the time of being pushed out, propelled out through the birth canal out into the world. So all of that is meant by birth. And so first we take birth, then what's not stated but should also be taken into consideration is the process of growth. Like, it's not that the rest of the course of life up to old age is all sweet roses and perfume, but there's the pains of growing up, reaching adolescence, you know, all of the stress of adolescence, conflict with one's parents, first time falling in love, being rejected, then going to school and having to study and write term papers, take exams, graduate, only to go on to the next level of school, from kindergarten, from elementary school to middle school, high school, college. Then if you go to graduate school, all of the stress of graduate school, then the stress of looking for a job, and finding one's life's love after many disappointments, marriage, working for years and years at a job, then retirement, then actually one is growing old all this time, even though we speak about old age as one stage of life, but There's the constant, even from the time of birth, there's a gradual aging in whatever realm of beings one is living in. But then when one reaches the age of whether it be 60, 70, 80, we call this old age. And then there can take place the decay of the teeth, even the breaking of the teeth, more visits to the dentist. The hair that had been so beautiful, whether black, brown, blonde, now turns gray, or in the case of men, falls out, and you have bald head. Then the skin wrinkles, that beautiful, bright, shiny skin is now all shriveled and wrinkled. One's energy declines, and so one has to rest more. One loses that energy that one had in youth. The faculties decay so that one has more problems seeing. Hearing becomes weaker, so one might need a hearing aid. Um, the other senses weaker. The sense of taste maybe deteriorates. So there's old age, so that is the second base of urgency. The third is illness. So we could just mention a few of the major types of illnesses. Heart condition, including heart attack, stroke, cancers of various kinds, could be Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, um, shingles, which I'm told is very painful. Have I missed any other major? Pneumonia?
Cancer?
I have cancer.
Oh,
Yeah, I have various.
Diabetes?
diabetes.
Yeah, diabetes, very common. Oops.
Cardiovascular disease?
Yeah, I guess we consider that.
Fibromyalgia.
It's going to challenge my spelling ability.
And lupus.
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 Is that, is that for, I'm trying to get common ones. Is
Yeah,
lupus
I see.
common?
Arthritis, Bhante.
Arthritis.
Arthritis is very common.
Gout.
Any autoimmune?
Gout.
Spinal stenosis.
Eye disease? Dry eye?
Oh, we
age?
have eye disease. Okay, there was what? Arthritis. Right.
Would viral infections come under this?
Yeah, I think we should put some viral infections. Did I put pneumonia? Okay.
Yeah.
Loss of hearing.
Well, we have I think this should be enough. Otherwise, we spend too much time on the illness and not enough on the others. Okay. But also we should put here, though it's not an illness, but it's could come under this, will be the various kinds of accidents and injuries, including automobile accidents and so on.
I'm sorry, Bhante, but mental illness.
Yeah, we could put that also. Including, let's see, anxiety, depression, they call it bipolar, bipolar,
Schizophrenia. schizophrenia,
Okay,
neurosis,
Depression.
I have that there. I put that.
COVID.
Well, COVID is a viral infection, so it's covered there. Okay, then we have death. And of course, death will tie up with many of these illnesses, but the definition is the passing of beings out of the various orders of beings. So we, as human beings, when we die, then we fall out from the human realm, and we don't know where we'll be going, whether we're coming back to the human realm or to some other realm. So perishing, disappearance, dying, completion of time. And from the technical definition, it's the breakup of the aggregates, this combination of the aggregates. Okay, then comes a rebirth after death from the Buddhist perspective. And so a base of urgency is the prospect of rebirth into any of the bad realms. The lowest, the hells, of which there are different kinds, the animal realm, or the realm of the pretas, the realm of afflicted spirits. And as you can imagine, the Buddha's texts are replete with descriptions of these different bad realms of rebirth. Okay, then comes, this is sort of a theme for reflection, sort of reflecting on our past suffering in samsara. And there's a famous short sutta in which the Buddha says, actually a number of short suttas that I collected here, that the streams of tears that we've shed as we've wandered through this long course of samsara, weeping and wailing, this is more than the water in the four great oceans. For a long time, we've experienced the death of our mother, our father, brother, sister, son, daughter. Then I added husband, wife. And as a result, we've shed more tears than the water in the four great oceans. And another one that each of us, as we've roamed and wandered through the round of rebirths, just in one aeon, we've left behind a stack of bones as tall as, he mentions, Vapula Mountain. It's a mountain near Rajagaha, a very big mountain. And the reason, because the samsara is without discoverable beginning. So that's the past suffering in samsara. Then comes the future suffering in samsara, which is just the projection of the suffering from the past. So for our purposes, we'll just be joining together 5, 6, and 7, just under the general heading of the suffering of repeated existence in samsara. Then the 8th is the suffering involved in the search for food, or the suffering of hunger. Okay, now those of us living in Western countries, whether the US, Canada, Great Britain, the European countries, or maybe the better, more developed countries of Asia, maybe Singapore, Malaysia, sort of we take, the quest for food rather for granted. So, we get a little bit hungry, we just go to the refrigerator, prepare a meal, or go take out the food, prepare a meal. If we like, we can go out to a restaurant, and we have so many choices. Indian restaurant, Thai restaurant, here in the US, a Mexican restaurant, Italian restaurant, Japanese restaurant, Greek restaurant. There are Ethiopian restaurants, probably. I don't know, did I miss anything popular? Anyway, so many choices. Of course, Chinese restaurant, because I live in a Chinese monastery, so that doesn't occur to me. Okay, yeah, so we take it for granted, but so for so many people around the world, probably the majority of the world's population, the quest for food every day, it's a major challenge. Like I think the figure is like 800 million people face food insecurity, which means that from day to day, they're not certain that they're going to have food the next day. I think something like now it's 200 million people are facing severe levels of hunger, and maybe it's 150 million people are facing very, very serious conditions of food deprivation. And then around the world, we have like major food catastrophes. I collected just some images. I try to avoid the most shocking images. Just off the internet. This was the famine in Yemen, particularly severe in 2018. So an estimated 20 million people in Yemen at that time were food insecure, not having enough food to meet their daily caloric requirements. 2021 still continuing today, but the picture is from 2021 Afghanistan. You can see long lines for the World Food Program. Even last year, I remember reading that people wanted to sell their little children in order to have some money to buy food to feed their other children. The hunger crisis was so severe in the Afghanistan, and the World Food Program had been, I think it had been providing food to 15 million people in Afghanistan. And because of shortage of funds, they had to cut, I think, 10 million people from the food rolls. So down from 10 million to 5 million people. And the 10 million people cut just challenge every day to get enough to eat. Then now Sudan is facing severe food crisis. Nearly 18 million people facing acute hunger and 5 million people in emergency levels of hunger. And then in Gaza right now, hundreds and thousands of people are starving as famine arrives. And this was back in December of last year. Now it's even much more severe where children are dying from malnutrition. So you can see that this quest for food, we just take it for granted, but it's, if you really reflect on it, and then going outside the human realm, look at the animal realm where the quest for food, it's, if you're certain kinds of animals, you are perpetually in danger of being caught and ravaged in order to provide a meal for other animals. And all the animals are constantly searching for food. The tigers, the lions are always searching for other animals to pounce upon to eat. And wolves have to search. And if they go to the farm, the wolf goes to the farm to catch chickens or lambs or calves in danger of being shot by the farmer. And so this world of sentient life, it's a continual process, the Buddha says, in the animal realm. It's a matter of the strong eating the weak and the stronger eating those who are strong but a little bit weaker than themselves. Okay, so these are the themes that we'll be going through reflectively to generate this perception of danger. And so let us do just a little stretch for about a couple of minutes. So you could do some bending and stretching for 2 minutes, and then we'll come back to sit. And I'll do this as a guided meditation. So let me pause the recording while we do our stretch. Okay, we're going to start by doing a few minutes, maybe about 5 minutes of mindfulness of breathing, simply to settle the mind. Okay, so you can take your congenial sitting meditation position. And then set up mindfulness on the breath and just let the mind settle down. Okay, now we're going to be practicing the Adina Sanya, the perception of danger or of the drawback or of the pitfalls, or the unsatisfactory nature of things, following the scheme of the 8 bases for generating the samvega, the sense of urgency. In this meditation, I should say, you have to do in small doses. It's difficult to do it over long extended periods. So I prefer to do this just for short periods, alternating it with periods of mindful breathing, mindfulness of breathing. And also, even though this practice sort of presupposes an acceptance of the idea of rebirth, if you have trouble with that teaching, don't 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 worry about it. Don't be too concerned, but just try to interpret these different bases of urgency in relation to this life itself, and to see it as a kind of spur for at least developing a mind of equanimity in the face of these difficulties and challenges. Okay, so we start off with birth. And we have to remember now that birth means it's called the descent into the womb in the case of the human birth. And so now you have to imagine yourself sort of coming into a fertilized egg, the consciousness connecting to a fertilized egg, and then going through the whole process of embryonic development, and then fetal development, and when the time has arrived, then you contemplate being propelled out through the birth canal, out into the world. And some psychologists have regarded this as a very traumatic experience. I think it was Otto Rank, a European psychoanalyst, who spoke about the birth trauma. In the mother's womb, one is peaceful and calm, everything is taken care of. And then suddenly you're turned around and driven out headfirst out into the world. So that's birth. Then, as one goes through life, all the challenges of growth, development, maturation, eventually, gradually, old age creeps in. The hair begins to turn gray. The teeth break. Maybe they have to be replaced with artificial teeth. One's beauty or handsome qualities fade away. The skin becomes wrinkled. The body, which could stand straight and upright, now becomes stooped. And you might have to use a walking stick or a walker when you walk. Your level of vitality declines. The senses become weaker, eyesight starts to weaken, even to the point where you might go blind. Hearing grows weaker, so you might need a hearing aid. And often, particularly in our culture, old people are just neglected, sometimes ridiculed, avoided. And we all have to go through this unless we die early. We have to face old age, the suffering of old age. Okay, then there is illness. In childhood, we have the childhood illnesses, chicken pox, measles, mumps, and the body susceptible to more viruses. Then as we grow older, we face conditions like diabetes, arthritis, heart condition, heart attack, stroke, cancers of various kinds, lung cancer, liver cancer, intestinal cancer, for women, breast cancer, for men, prostate cancer, skin cancers, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, viral infections, mental illnesses like anxiety, depression, bipolar condition, in severe cases, schizophrenia. And then there's a whole range of accidents, especially automobile accidents. So we could say illnesses and injuries inherent in bodily existence. And then there is death. Last week we did the systematic meditation on death, but here we just bring it all together just in the idea that when death takes place, we have to leave everything behind. Leave behind our whole life situation, all of our possessions, but especially we have to leave behind all of our loved ones, and even this body itself. And we never know in advance when death will take place. Even if we're in the prime of life, death can take place anytime through some unexpected accident, injury, or sudden bodily condition, heart attack, and so forth. So death. And so we have birth, then growth, maturation, then old age, illness, and death. And then we have the suffering intrinsic to samsara, repeating the cycle of birth, old age, illness, and death. The Buddha says, since time without any beginning, no first point to the round of rebirths. Through our ignorance and craving, we create karma, good and bad karma. And then at death, our ignorance and craving pulls us on in the cycle of repeated birth. And our karma drives us to one or another of the 5 realms of existence. And if the bad karma takes precedence, takes on a dominant role, then it will lead us to rebirth in one of the bad or undesirable realms of rebirth. Even the worst kind of karma can drag us down to the hells, or less severe to the animal realm, or to the realm of the afflicted spirits. And if we reflect on the inconceivably beginningless nature of samsara, then countless times we've had to undergo the suffering of the hells, the animal realm, and the realm of the spirits, the afflicted spirits. And if we continue to drift along with ignorance and craving and create unwholesome karma, in the future that karma will pull us down again and again to the bad realms of rebirth. And if we come back to the fortunate realm, like the human realm, then we have to face the separation when death takes place, the loss of our beloved mother and father, or the loss of beloved wife or husband, often the early death of our children, or the loss of our closest beloved friends. So all of these facts underscore the unsatisfactory nature of our existence in samsara, the round of rebirths. And then there's the suffering inherent in the quest for food. We eat a meal, then some hours later we go hungry again, have to eat again, then go hungry again. We spend our lives working to earn money in order to purchase foods. And then we have to reflect on the difficulties that so many people all around the world face in acquiring adequate nutrition. Especially refugees in camps, waiting for the meal distribution to take place each day. Or living in countries which are subject to drought, food shortages, or war in which food is used as a weapon, or the denial of food is used as a weapon of war. Okay, now I'm going to let you sort of reflect on these themes on your own, just for about 5 minutes, just silently. Turn these ideas over in your own way: birth, old age, sickness, death, the suffering inherent in samsara, the round of rebirths, and the suffering involved in the search, the quest for food. Okay, do it on your own now in your own way. Okay, you can relax now. And what we're going to do is have now a period of walking meditation. But this is the way we do this. We could do this perception of danger while doing the walking meditation. And the way we do this is we walk back and forth. You don't have to walk in a very slow way, but you could walk at a, say, slow, normal pace. And you just turn over again and again in the mind these bases of urgency for generating the sense of urgency. You could just go through birth, old age, illness, and death. Even those four are enough. And then death followed by new birth, old age, illness, and death, followed by new birth, old age, illness, and death. And then if you want to expand on that in your reflection, you could do so in any way that is in accord with the way I explained. But if you just want to keep to those four primary ideas, birth, old age, illness, and death, then you can do it that way. Okay, so we'll do like 20 minutes of walking, and then we'll come back for another short sitting meditation.